Hi everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. So a couple of weeks back, I posted a video on what are the 18 most asked Ansible interview questions. Thanks a lot. I received a very good response for that video and some of you have asked me to answer those questions. So I'm making this video to answer those interview questions and we'll try to keep it as practical as possible so that we'll also be able to cover a few scenarios. So let's quickly jump in to see what are those questions as well as answers. So firstly, these are the questions, and if you want to look into each of these questions in detail, you can either pause this video or you can also go back to the previous video by clicking on the link that I have posted in the description, or you can also click on the tile that you see to top right of your screen. Okay, firstly, what is configuration management? So configuration management is a method or it's a process of managing your software, system or hardware. So basically, let's assume that in your organization, you have a lot of servers, whether it's on-premise, cloud, or be it anywhere. And you have hundreds of these and you want to manage installation of a couple of packages, or you want to manage the upgradation of a couple of softwares, or you have to do some mandatory installations, whether it be security patches or something, so for which you use configuration management. So why do you use that? Because if you want to do it manually on all of these servers or using some scripts, it will take a lot of time, because each of these servers may be different, like they are of different operating systems or they're of different flavors of a similar operating system. So because of which you might have to end up writing multiple scripts, or you might have to do some manual patching. So to avoid this, you can use a single tool which supports the configuration management, like Ansible, Puppet, Chef, or any other configuration management tools. Now, question number 2. Do you think Ansible is better than other configuration management tools? If yes, why? So basically, you have a lot of configuration management tools that are available in market. So to justify Ansible is better, you need to put the points that Ansible is different from other configuration management tools and it is better in achieving a specific use case. So let's assume Ansible, to answer this, Ansible is agentless. So what do you mean by agentless? Is that if you want to configure as I told you in the previous example, you want to configure hundreds of virtual machines or any servers. So to configure all of this, you don't have to install any agent when you're using Ansible as a configuration management tool. So like the other configuration management tools, they have master agent or master slave architecture, because of which you have to pre-configure all of these virtual machines. But in case of Ansible, the only prerequisite is you have to have a passwordless authentication between your host that has Ansible installed and all the other servers that you want to configure with Ansible. So it's a very simple process, and Ansible uses very basic protocols. Like if it is Linux, Ansible uses SSH, and if it is Windows, Ansible use WinRM. So these are the protocols that Ansible use to connect to the agents, or in Ansible you don't call them as agents, or the servers that you want to configure. The other important thing is Ansible is backed up by a very good community, because Ansible is written in Python, and it's backed up by Red Hat and other community members who have knowledge on Python. They build their own Ansible modules. If you look at the pace at which Ansible is building the modules, it's very rapid. And the other thing is that Ansible is using YAML for writing the files. So it's YAML scripting, which is very widely used. And YAML is a very easy way of writing your files. So these are the few advantages why you use Ansible over other configuration management tools. So the next question is, can you write an Ansible playbook to install HTTPD service? So this is a very basic Ansible playbook that interviewers might ask you to write. So I'm not writing it now because I don't want to take time for this. What I'll do is I'll try to put the link in the description where you can refer to the answer. How do you write this? So it's a very basic one. You just have to write one Ansible playbook, and you have to configure the host where you want to run this, and then you write a couple of tasks to install HTTP service as first task, and then you start the HTTP service as a second task, and then basically check if any firewall things are required. You can ask the interviewer that do you want to also look at the firewall, if the firewall is open or not. If not, you can just finish it in two steps. Step one as installing HTTP service, and step two as starting the HTTP service. And the other question that you can ask your interviewer in this case is, what is the operating system, as well as what is the flavor of the operating system. Is it CentOS, Debian, or whatever? And you can write the program accordingly using the yum or apt or whatever the uh, package manager on that flavor of operating system is. So the next one is basically it's to test you that if you have used Ansible in real, or what is your expertise on Ansible. So it's a scenario based question, how Ansible helped your organization. So try not to overwhelm the interviewer with your answers. Do not put a lot of things. Just say one practical scenario of how you used Ansible in your organization and how it helped you. So you can possibly tell from your previous examples where you used Ansible to reduce your time for your day-to-day activities. Maybe you can say that you have some 40 to 50 servers, and previously you were using some basic shell scripts as well as PowerShell scripts to install some packages, whether it be a basic security patching, or whether it can be a mandatory installation that is required by your organization, turning off firewalls on all the VMs, or enabling some strict rules, whatever it can be. So you can say that previously you're using some shell scripts as well as PowerShell scripts and some manual tasks to connect to these VMs and make the required changes. But once we adopted Ansible, we have reduced this time. So Ansible was very effective, and it saved a lot of time. Maybe you can say that in the time basis, previously you were doing for X amount of time using this manual steps, and using Ansible, the time has reduced to Y. So just try to put it in this way. Be as practical as possible, and interviewer has to believe that you have good working experience on Ansible. Then question number 5, that is, what is Ansible dynamic inventory? So this is again a scenario based question. Like, let's assume that you have virtual machines on AWS. Like, let's assume that your developers are creating virtual machines on AWS, or your admin is creating virtual machines on AWS, and now you have configured Ansible to make some uh, configurations on that virtual machines. And let's assume that today you have 50 virtual machines, and Ansible is very effective in configuring those 50 virtual machines. Let's assume you are doing a MySQL database installation on of these virtual machines, and Ansible has done it very quickly on all of them, and everything is going good. Later point of time, you realize that people, admins or developers, they are creating a lot of more virtual machines. Let's assume after a week you see that the number has grown from 50 to 60. So now how do you achieve it with Ansible? Do you frequently go and check what are the virtual machines and add it to the Ansible inventory, all of these virtual machines? No, right? So for that, Ansible supports something called as dynamic inventory. So the concept of dynamic inventory is Ansible keeps looking at your EC2 or your AWS account for what are the newly added virtual machines, and Ansible would auto configure those virtual machines using the concept of dynamic inventory. So this is the concept of dynamic inventory. So the next question is, what is Ansible Tower, and how do you have you used it? If yes, why did you use it? So you don't have to lie in this case. If you have not used Ansible Tower, you can upfront tell that you have not used Ansible Tower, because not everyone works on the enterprise model. So Ansible Tower is basically an enterprise model or a version of Ansible, where it provides you a fancy graphical UI, fancy graphical user interface, and it also extends some additional Ansible capabilities. Like, it has a very good user management, and you can configure it with your IAM if you're using Ansible Tower on AWS. So a lot of fancy stuff that you can do with Ansible Tower. It's an enterprise model. It's backed up, so you get support if there is any issue with Ansible. So these are the things that Ansible Tower does. But if you have not used Ansible Tower, you can simply say that we are working on Ansible CLI. We are only using the open source version of Ansible. That doesn't make any difference, because end of the day, you have knowledge of Ansible. So the next question is, how do you manage RBAC on Ansible Tower? So this is again a question on Ansible Tower. So basically, you will be tested on, in this question, you are asked about, do you know about role-based access control? So let's assume that you are using Ansible Tower in your enterprise, and you want to segregate access for a specific group, or you want to distinguish users based on the access. Let's assume you have developers, you have testers, you have admins. So how do you distinguish these people with their access on the Ansible Tower? So for which Ansible supports something called as role-based access control. So using role-based access control, you can say that this specific group called testers, or this specific group called as read-only, has only read-only access on the Ansible Tower. They can only view the playbooks, or they can only view what is happening on the Ansible Tower, but they cannot execute anything, or they cannot write or make any changes to the Ansible Tower. So role-based access control is basically used for managing access to the Ansible Tower. And you can also configure Ansible with some external identity providers. Let's assume that your organization is using some SSOs like LDAP or Keycloak or any external identity providers. You can also integrate them with using Ansible Tower. Or if you are in AWS, you can also integrate it with your IAM. So these are the different things that you can do with respect to RBAC. And the next question is, what is Ansible Galaxy command and why is it used? So Ansible Galaxy command is basically used to bootstrap. Let's assume that you want to start writing an Ansible playbook and you want to create the whole structure. So instead of creating everything by your own, Ansible Galaxy command uh, can be used to bootstrap the whole structure. It creates the folders, required files, and everything, and you can use whatever, like instead of creating a whole structure by yourself, you can directly use it. So this is about Ansible Galaxy command. Next question is, can you explain me the structure of Ansible playbook using roles? So even I'm seeing these questions after a long time, so I'm taking some time to read them. Can you explain me the structure of Ansible playbook using roles? Okay, so again, it is somewhat related to the previous question, that is Ansible Galaxy command, which creates the structure for your Ansible playbook, and it creates roles, it creates all your default handlers, everything. So in the same way here, the question is about what is the structure of Ansible playbook, what all falls into the Ansible structure. So Ansible has a standard structure. So if you're creating them, you have the defaults folder, you have the handlers, you have templates, you have metadata, you have tasks. So all of these things are present in the Ansible default structure. So you can say that we use Ansible Galaxy command to create the structure. And these are the different folders that are created by Ansible Galaxy command. And you can also create them manually. You can also describe what each and every folder does, like why do you use handlers, why do you use defaults, or why do you use templates. So you can talk about each of them in detail. And the other thing is, you can also talk about the folders, like the group variables, the other folders, and what is your structure of a sample Ansible playbook that you have written. And the next question is, what are handlers in Ansible, and why are they used? Handlers are basically similar to the normal tasks in Ansible, but they only run when a task contains a notify directive. So let's assume that you have a basic task in your Ansible, for example, for creation of an Nginx. You are installing HTTPD or Nginx. So the next step is you basically start. So in some cases, you only want to start on a conditional basis. So what you can do is you can use this directive called notify, and this notify would call the task that you created in the handler, and that gets called. So it's basically a way of calling only when it is required. So you can say it as conditional tasks, or you can also call them as tasks that only run during a special notification. So this is about handlers. You can also give an example that I have stated, like uh, you have a task that installs Nginx, and you can use a handler to start Nginx, or uh, you have a failure in one of your tasks, then you can use notify to say that, okay, send a notification using handlers or whatever example that you want to give. So the next question is, I would like to run a specific set of tasks only on Windows VMs and not on Linux VMs. Is it possible? Yeah. So again, this is a pretty common question, that you want to run a specific set of tasks on a specific operating system and not on the other operating system. So what you can do is that you can find out the operating system that this specific task is running on. Let's assume that you have 10 tasks and you want to run 5 on Windows and 5 on Linux VMs. I mean, if the operating system is Linux VM. So you can use tags. Ansible supports something called as tags, or you can also use the environ, and you can find out the environment variable, and you can use conditional basis running of tasks in Ansible to achieve this use case. Next, does Ansible support parallel execution? So first of all, you need to understand this question. What do you mean by parallel execution? So you can say the interviewer that Ansible does parallel execution. Like, if there are 5 tasks, what Ansible does is it execute task number 1 on all the configured servers. Let's assume Ansible wants to run on 10 virtual machines. So it takes task 1 and it runs parallelly task 1 on all of these virtual machines. And then it runs task by task in a serial way. That means once task 1 is done execution parallelly on all of the hosts, then it moves to task number 2. If you want to run even the tasks in a parallel way, then you need to have multiple instances of Ansible. So this is a better way of answering the question. So firstly, understand what is parallel execution, and then you can easily answer. And if the interviewer is asking about different strategies that are available, then you might talk about the serial and the linear, the other strategies that are present in Ansible. I'll also try to put a link in the description for this, the other strategies that Ansible supports. So the question number 13 is, what is the protocol that Ansible uses to connect to Windows VMs? So this is a straightforward question. You can say Ansible uses WinRM to connect to Windows, and it uses SSH to connect to Linux. And the next question is, can you place them in the order of precedence? So you have, okay, so you have multiple places to store variables in Ansible, and here they're asking about group vars, role vars, and extra vars. So you have to put them in the order of precedence. So Ansible supports a lot of places to store the variables. So you have to be very sure about the precedence of the variables, even not for the interview, but even when you are trying to execute Ansible in real time, you need to know where to place your variables so that precedence acts accordingly. So for this question, I think the order is correct. Like, you have group vars, role vars, and extra vars. That is the order of precedence. And I'll also put the whole order of precedence of the other variables that you have in Ansible. There are a lot of things, like you have var files, you have cache facts, and you have playbook host vars. I mean, in the playbook, you can also put variables. So there are many places. So I'll try to put the entire variable precedence in the description so that you can take a look at it. How do you handle secrets in Ansible? Okay, so you can configure Vault. HashiCorp supports, I mean, HashiCorp has something called as Vault. So you can store the Ansible secrets in the Vault. That is one of the better solutions that I know. If you are aware of any other solutions, you can also post it in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to learn. Can we use Ansible for IAC, infrastructure as code? Okay. If yes, can you compare it with any other IAC tools like Terraform? Okay. So yeah, Ansible also supports infrastructure as code. I'll not say it's an infrastructure as code tool, because predominantly Ansible is a configuration management tool, but there is a cross of paths. So Ansible also achieve, Ansible can also achieve some of the tasks that Terraform can do, but I would say Ansible is a configuration management tool. It might achieve some of the things, like it can create an EC2 instance on your AWS or something like that, but mostly it's used for configuration management. Can you talk about a Ansible playbook that you have wrote and how it helped your company? Okay, so this is a scenario based question one more time, and this, I think personally these are the questions that you'll evaluate your real knowledge on Ansible, because the other questions you can even Google and try to find the answers, but these questions are the real important questions. So talk about a playbook that really makes value to your company, or that really made a value to your company. So for example, you can talk about installation and configuration of a Oracle database, or a something that actually has a lot of steps to do, and you used Ansible to effectively reduce the time. For example, to install and configure an Oracle database, it will take close to 45 minutes for each of the thing, and if you want to do it on 50 to 100 servers, then imagine the amount of time that you're spending in it. So for which you can use Ansible, and you can say that the time has significantly reduced, and the entire installation and the chance of failure has reduced a lot, because Ansible is an automated creation and manually you might do some errors. You can say that the time has reduced from 45 minutes into 50 servers to 30 minutes your entire Ansible playbook is taking to execute on all of the 50 servers. Or else you can also talk about some complex installations, like, you can say that you have uh, installed Kubernetes orchestrations like Kubernetes. Installing Kubernetes is not an easy thing, because if you're using things like Kube ADM, which is a basic tool for installing Kubernetes on a cluster, so there are a lot of steps to do. You have to attach all the nodes and all, so you can also automate the process using Ansible. So if you don't have any idea, like, you haven't worked on Ansible in real time, so you can go to Ansible Galaxy. It's a platform where you have a lot of Ansible playbooks. So look into that Ansible playbooks, and pick one which you feel is a complicated one, and you go through the code of the Ansible playbook. Ansible Galaxy has every most of the Ansible playbooks, and the code is also there. So pick one which suits you the better, and you can project them in your interview. What do you think Ansible can improve? Okay, so this is a question that I have added, because always people talk about advantages, but you should also know the real downsides of the tool or that you're working in, because every day if you work on a specific tool, you might be feeling that, okay, this tool can improve in this aspect. So here interviewer will try to judge you if you have really worked on Ansible. This is my personal favorite. I keep asking such questions. So the best way to answer this is, if you're not aware of any drawbacks, go to the Ansible GitHub page. You can find the issues, and with your real-time experience, you can also say that Ansible can, currently Ansible does not provide option to increase the verbosity of the task. Like, what is verbosity, like the debug level per task basis. So Ansible can improve in that aspect. It can provide verbosity on the task basis. This is one of the most liked issue on Ansible GitHub page. And the other thing is, Ansible Windows support can be improved. We all know that Ansible supports Windows, but the support for Linux is much better than Windows. So you can say that the Windows support can be improved. And you can also say some other things, like, uh, Ansible can support multiple IDEs. There are not much IDEs today that can do auto correction, suggestion. So Ansible can work on developing some plugins for those IDEs. Like, for example, if you're a Python developer, you know that there are a lot of IDEs like Visual Studio or PyCharm, which can auto correct, auto suggest, and it can also, provide some kind of linting and indentation things. With Ansible, that's not available today. There are some plugins in the VS Code as well as the other IDEs, but they are not up to the mark. So Ansible can look at contributing that, because so that it will help a lot of Ansible newbies and people who work on Ansible on day-to-day basis. So this is about Ansible interview questions, guys. If you have any questions, please comment so that I can answer uh, to you on the comment section. And you can also uh, chat with me on LinkedIn. I'll post my LinkedIn account description, link in the description. So yeah, I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye.